great honor to introduce Dr. Gina Poe. Um, Dr. Poe was actually our first ever CNI speaker back in September of 2022. So she is the first CNI bestie, and it's so great to have you here to deliver the last lecture of the 2024-2025 academic year. You'll always be special for that. This year we've had a lot of amazing conversations. We've been looking into, just sort of basic brain development, brain injury, neurodiversity, and then also thinking about the interplay between our environment and genetics and how essentially our teachers here are really kind of bioengineers of children. And now we are going to talk about sleep. Dr. Gina Poe is the sleep scientist, in my opinion, in terms of neuroscience. She's in the Department of Integrative Biology and Physiology at UCLA. She's the director of Maximizing Access to Research Careers USTAR program and the Eleanor Leslie Chair in Innovative Brain Science. Um, Gina has been pivotal, essentially, in uh, opening up science and neuroscience for folks to allow for excellence to come in. Her lab investigates the mechanisms by which sleep traits serve learning and memory consolidation, very important to teachers. Memory difficulties in both in post-traumatic stress disorders, schizophrenia, Alzheimer's disease, and even in autism involve these kinds of abnormalities in the sleep-dependent memory consolidation processes, and that is what her lab studies and what she tries to connect it to. Thank you, Gina, for everything that you do, not just here with us for CNI, but outside of it to make science a more just, awesome, and also just thrilling place to be in. With that, I just like everyone to welcome the Gina Poe.
Thank you so much. CNI is near and dear to my heart for the exact same reasons. Because of you guys, we had such a nice conversation. I don't know, it was 2 years ago, something like 3 years ago, some time ago. And I just really respect what you're doing and want to be part of it. So I want to encourage all of you to interrupt me with any questions you have because I want to make this as relevant to you as possible. So if you have any questions as I go along, I can totally just skip around in my slides. It is not a set in stone talk at all. So I should probably just open up with what questions do you have? But I'll just get us started and just know that sprinkle in your questions whenever you have them, whether it's about your own sleep or a partner's sleep or your children's sleep or your students' sleep or whatever it is. I'm super happy to answer if I can. I am not the only sleep researcher, of course. So anyway, let me share my screen. I have two screens here and they don't always want to talk to each other very well. Let's see. So I think I can do this and say share and then go and make it big. And I don't know which one you guys are seeing. Which one are you seeing? Let's see, it's continued. Do you see just one slide or do you see my presenter's mode?
Your presenter mode.
You see my presenter mode? Okay, so I'll swap displays. That better?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So this slide was sort of piggybacked off of a painting that Michael Chase, one of the founders in sleep research, he did, which is a painting of all different animals sleeping in the shape of a brain. And I just took a bunch of pictures from the internet of different animals sleeping, including the octopus here is a dolphin, here's jellyfish upside down, a pig, up here's a little Drosophila fruit fly. And it's just to underscore the fact that all animals sleep and even seem to have two states of sleep, which is something we didn't know before. But our dream state of sleep, at least in humans, we can call it dreaming, and in cats and dogs and rats, if there's a tiny little area of the brainstem that inhibits our acting out our dreams, if that's lesioned, then they act out what looks like a dream as well during that dream REM sleep state. And then there's the non-REM deep sleep state. And this is just in the brainstem here. I'm putting picture of a guy in Japan sort of sleeping on the subway. So we all sleep. And this is me when I was born. I did not think I would be a sleep researcher. I didn't know what I was going to be when I grew up, but it was more like maybe whatever would help people is what I was thinking. I was thinking working for the World Health Organization. Maybe I'd get an MD, PhD in public health and work for the World Health Organization. I didn't know, but I just knew I wanted to help people. And my parents were both super supportive of me and my dreams, and also um, really helped me believe that I could be anything I wanted to be, although scientist wasn't on either of their minds either. They were thinking politician or something, but not scientist. That's my brother, Tamir. All right, so this is sort of my history. Born in 65, my parents both were stressing education as a way to get ahead. I was, very, very poor. Our family was very poor. Although as a child, I didn't know that. We were on welfare and all of that. And both of my parents just said, just get as good education as you can. And so I ended up going to Stanford for undergraduate. And then after I went to Stanford again, I still didn't know I wanted to be a scientist. So I just happened to become the job I could get was to become a technician in a laboratory at Edwards Air Force Base, working with F-16 fighter pilots. And they're flying low altitude missions with high G forces. And my laboratory wanted to find out whether you could tell whether they were going to go unconscious with those high G forces, and they could switch it to autopilot. So yeah, it was a really cool project. And this was my first taste of research. And I said, oh, this is a lot cooler than I thought, because I envisioned tight buns and pets and a lab coat and isolation. It wasn't like that at all in this project. And really, I've never found a project that looked exactly like that anyway. So I did that for a couple of years. And through that, I went to a conference, this one in 1988, which was basically, this picture is all the sleep researchers in the world in 1988, maybe a half dozen more somewhere in the world, but these were all of them, plus a bunch of trainees like me here in the middle. This guy was a brand new trainee, and a few others in here were brand new trainees. But this is where I learned about sleep in general and what we knew at the time, which was very little. We knew that we spent a third of our lives asleep, and then we didn't know, other than that, what we were doing. And so each one of these different researchers had different hypotheses that they were testing, and they presented those to us trainees. And I said, oh my gosh, we don't really have any idea. These are the world's experts, and we don't really even know. So I was inspired by the questions that I was able to ask and the ways that they were able to answer it, that this was a really good group of people who really cared about this subject and were inviting me and other trainees to be part of the community. It was sleep research, like many other fields of neuroscience research, and probably in research in general and science in general, was just a really welcoming, warm family community. Unfortunately, I have to say, I was the only Black person in this group, and now I am one of five. So the field has grown a lot, but at least in terms of the PI level, one of five who are actually doing basic sleep research in the world, in terms of people who are Black. But it's growing. I have two students myself, that are in my laboratory who are Black, so at least it's going to be up that much. But I also see many others around the world. So yeah, so just back to the timeline, just then I went to the PhD program in neuroscience at UCLA. Basic sleep research was the focus of my own project. And then when I graduated in 95, I did a postdoc at the University of Arizona, where I got to work on another cool project, which we sent some rats into space and see how they navigate in the 3D zero gravity environment. So it's almost the opposite of this. It was high G forces, here's zero G forces. And then, how do people sleep? How do the rats navigate and learn in that environment? And that was a lot of fun. I also did some aging research there in Arizona. And then my first faculty position was at Washington State University. I loved it. It's a very small community. 19,000 people, I think 19,000 students, 23,000 people total in the town. Unfortunately, I was single at the time, so I couldn't stay because there were no men to date. So I moved on to the town of a man who became my fiance and then my husband at the University of Michigan. And that's where I stayed for 15 years. We had 2 kids, and then just in 2016, we moved back to LA. And so I'm working at the same place I did my PhD, and I absolutely love it. A lot of the same people are here and doing really great work and just enjoying life, totally enjoying life. Let's see. So this is what we knew at the time in 1988, that sleep is a behavioral state. It's homeostatically regulated, meaning if you don't get enough of it, you got to get more. There's a characteristic posture, which is not this one that I showed you on that one slide. There's reduced responsiveness to external stimuli and increased arousal threshold. So, and it's rapidly reversible to distinguish it from stroke. So these sort of behavioral definitions of sleep are what allow us to characterize and classify sleep in multiple different animals, because we can test all of these things in different animals, including the fruit fly and the jellyfish, and all of these things have found to be true in all of these animals. So, in C. elegans worms, etc. There are other things that we could say are part of sleep too, like dreaming, but we can't ask everybody, all the animals if they're dreaming. We can only ask people and then, see the behavior of certain animals. So it is also characterized by really typical EEG traits, electrophysiological traits, and neurochemical milieus, where the sets of neurotransmitters and neurochemicals that are up and down in each state are completely different, which means that you probably can't replace sleep with any other state. You can't do it by just resting relaxed with, awake. You probably can't do it with meditation or a psychedelic. None of those things will reproduce what sleep is, because it's a very, very unique set of states that change. So at UCLA, we just recently, just last year, established a Center for Sleep and Performance, which is a lot of fun. And my name is, these are UCLA people on this paper that we published last year that really talks about student athlete travel and how that might change our students' ability to adapt and learn and to be mentally capable of facing their day. And it's really very, very taxing. In this paper, I hope you get a chance to read it. I should have put a QR code so it could link you right to it, but really is potentially harmful if we don't pay attention to their circadian rhythms and how much sleep they're getting each night. So we're hoping that this paper will have a big impact on the NCAA and others that are planning these student athlete travel schedules and games. Any questions so far? Yeah, just thinking some of this might be relevant to you and your students, but let's just go through it a little bit. So the two sort of things that impact sleep most are the homeostatic buildup of or need for sleep. As the longer you wake up in the morning, the more you're awake, the bigger your homeostatic need for sleep. And one signal of that is adenosine, which is what is blocked. The adenosine receptors are blocked by caffeine, which makes us think that we're fine when we're drinking caffeine, because our adenosine receptors are saying, oh, no, there's nothing there. It's fine. We don't have any adenosine, but it's really just being blocked by caffeine. And so we're running on fumes if we need caffeine to get going in the day or to stay awake. And then the other thing is it's a circadian wake promoting structure in our brain called the SCN, suprachiasmatic nucleus. And as you can see, the circadian promotion of wakefulness is pretty high in the morning, like mid-morning, about 10 o'clock, 9 or 10 o'clock. And then it's pretty high in the evening. You have sort of paradoxical, even though your homeostatic need is building, there's a circadian blockage of our ability to nap around 6 o'clock at night, 6 or 7 o'clock at night. I don't know. You have to be pretty sleep deprived. That homeostatic need has to be pretty built up to be able to fall asleep at that time of your day. Any questions so far? I'm really open to it, so I'm just going to wait a minute. So. Nope. You're welcome. Welcome to ask. That's okay. Marlon, were you going to say something?
I mean, I just love a good pause. A
Yeah.
good pause allows people to first get through the awkwardness. I just know our teachers have a question,
Yeah, sure you do. Like, how much sleep do you
but we get
need?
shy
How much
about
sleep do my
it.
children need? I don't know what ages you guys all teach, but the sleep need changes with different ages. So,
I just want to say, if I come home after a long day of work at 5 p.m., I'm ready for that 6 p.m. fall asleep. I don't
well, you must have a big homeostatic need then.
know.
Yeah. And
But you
also,
know, Dina, in conversation with our principals, I've actually had a lot of concerns regarding kids getting enough sleep. And they
yeah,
started to realize that some of the like behavioral issues that were happening were actually related to sleep issues, and that
yes.
they were dysregulated, and that if they gave the kids basically a nap time, right,
Mhm.
which kind of ends by the time you're in preschool,
Yeah.
the kids would actually show much better behavioral components.
Absolutely true. Yes. A lot of the sort of ADHD hyperactivity is really sleep deprivation. And it doesn't look the same in adults as it does in children. So when a child is underslept, they can look like they're really energetic. And a lot of parents, unfortunately, mistake their child's energy at 8, 9 o'clock at night for the fact that they're not sleepy and they shouldn't put them to bed. It's quite the opposite because it's a very paradoxical sort of hyperactivity based in sort of under so it's sort of a positive feedback loop because the parent doesn't put their kid to bed, and then the child is even more sleep deprived and more hyperactive the next day and less able to listen. Um, so yeah. Oh, I do see some yeah. Oh yeah, 7 years trying to get an MD PhD. So on brand. Yeah. Yeah. uh yeah.
It looks like somebody is asking a question, a clarifying question. It says, "What does homeostatic buildup mean? Could you explain it
Oh,
more?"
oh yeah, I didn't even see that. Yes, homeostatic buildup means if you get not enough of it, your body will demand more of it in the next waking period. It's just your sleep onset time from the time your head hits the pillow will go down and down and down because your body's saying, gotta have this right now. And interestingly, the two states of sleep, the dream state and the slow wave state, both have independent homeostatic buildup. And so if you fall asleep and you only give yourself 4 hours, maybe 2 nights in a row, that REM sleep and non-REM sleep will be fighting for that little stamp of time that you've given it. And you will have lots of um, dissociated states where both features are colliding at the same time. And you might have sleepwalking and sleep talking. And you can even have REM behavior disorder or sleep paralysis, all these kinds of things. Um, what's it called? Not nightmares, but sleep terrors, night terrors come more with sleep deprivation, and it happens more in children than it does in adults because children are more susceptible. They need more sleep in the first place, and so they're more likely to be sleep deprived. The other thing is, I'm so glad you asked that question, whoever asked that question, because this circadian drive for wakefulness is even stronger, like twice as big as yours, maybe even 3 times, depending on your age, 3 times as big as mine, because the circadian drive, the melatonin drive at night goes down and down and down the older you get. And so that circadian rhythm is less prominent. Um, but in children, it's huge. So even if they're really sleep deprived, even if you've kept them up till midnight the night before, they will still wake up at 6. Not because they don't need sleep, but because they can't get it because their circadian rhythm wakes them up so strongly. It's very sad because that means they can't wake up for their sleep the way we could, when we're older. Right. Fantastic. Oh, I see Q&A. There it is. Moment I learned we can't multitask. Yeah. Spouses getting things done. Yeah. Sky, I totally agree with you. Yeah, very good. All right, let's go forward to keep interrupting me, keep writing those questions or unmuting yourself and just asking. I would love it. Okay, so this is just generally how sleep is organized across the night. So we fall asleep. Here's wakefulness. This is a Fitbit from my sister-in-law, Sandy, and it's just so classic that I had to show it to you. So we go from wakefulness to N2 stage sleep, which has these sleep spindles, which come once or twice every 30 seconds. And these sleep spindles last 1.5 seconds. That can be viewed in your EEG electrodes from your scalp, or if you have depth electrodes in you, you can see them. And what they are is a conversation between your incoming thalamus, which is closed when you're asleep, this that closed to the outside input, and your cortex. And this seems to be a conversation, this 1.5 second long, really powerful conversation that helps consolidate your memories. And the more sleep spindles you have during the N2 state, the higher your IQ. So there's kind of a signature rate of sleep spindles and IQ, but also the more you're able to consolidate the things that you learn during the day at night while you're sleeping, the higher the density of your sleep spindles. So that's a really good signature that you've learned something and you're trying to consolidate it. And if you learn something new and then you don't increase your own density of spindles, you won't have consolidated. You won't remember nearly as well the next day. So yeah, so that's a good thing. And then you go into deep slow wave sleep, which you might notice is really only present in the first half of the night. And the last half of the night, it's not there at all. So if you miss the first few hours of sleep, you'll have missed all that deep slow wave sleep. And that's where you have big slow waves sweeping through your brain. We've recently found the last 10, 15 years that your brain is actually cleaning itself during this state. So if you miss that first half of your night, you have missed that brain cleaning time. And that is not good. All right, because you know what you feel like the next day if you haven't cleaned your brain, right? It's like it's harder to learn anything new. You feel sluggish. You feel, your brain fog, right? And that's what this sleep cleaning portion of the night really does for you. It's also the time when a lot of growth hormone is released in a big bolus. So for children, again, do not sleep deprive them, because that is when their deep slow wave sleep coincides with their melatonin rise, like it should. If in a non-sleep deprived child, they're growing like they should. Their brain is making the new connections it needs, and your entire body benefits from that early night sleep. So, any questions yet about that?
I have
Marlon
a
says,
question.
"Yeah,
So how does that work when your schedule changes? So you switch to a new school or different class
yeah."
schedules? How does that work?
Yeah, so you can switch about 2 hours a night. If you go to a new time zone, for example, you move across the country, about 2 hours a night is what your own circadian rhythm and sleep can keep up with. But if you're doing that all the time, it will never realign. It takes, about 2 hours at one night, 2 hours. But if you're like switching time zones by 3 hours, and then 4 nights later you're switching it back. I mean, it starts messing. You need time for all of the rhythms to align. So you can also, if you're a shift worker, you can also get pretty good again, but you have to keep that consistent. For example, if you're shifting so your class starts 2 hours later each day, you can switch your whole sleep schedule. But the problem is people don't do a good job shielding themselves from light in the morning. And so that light coming in through your window and in through your eyelids is still telling you what time it is, even if your class schedule has changed, even if if your work schedule has changed. So you need blackout curtains and all of that to really do it well, because that light signal is a perfect signal for your circadian rhythms to tell you what really the time is when you're trying to shift it. So, yeah. Yeah, I saw Lorraine, yes.
Yes. Um, I was wondering how much time does it take, like, to create that routine, like to switch out? Mostly
Yeah,
for kids.
yeah, it's again, if you've moved them across the country and the all of the light cues and social cues and meal cues and everything align with that new thing, again, if you're moving to Australia, if you're moving, 12 hours away, it will take, a good solid week to switch it. Even if you give yourself all the light cues and time cues of the new place. It takes about a week. But even then, it takes a little longer for all of the other, every cell in your body has a clock. And for those clocks to all get aligned, it takes a little longer than that, like our gut clock and our, so yeah, our muscle clock, all of those things there's different clocks in all of them. So great question. Yeah.
I do have another question.
Yeah, please. That's great.
So I work multiple jobs,
Yeah.
and in one of my jobs, the scientist comes out of me,
Yeah.
and I see a lot of my coworkers drinking energy drinks
Ugh.
because they're tired, because the
Yeah.
timing or the schedule. But then I see them sometimes in their break falling asleep.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
mean, they're
it
really,
worries me because I see um
yeah.
all these young people falling asleep on their break, drinking 1 to 3 energy
Oh
drinks a
God.
day.
Oh,
So if
yeah.
the brain falls asleep to do the cleaning,
Yeah.
when do they sleep?
Yeah, they're obviously, if you can fall asleep on an energy drink, first of all, your tolerance for caffeine, it must be really, really high, and you must have a ton of adenosine receptors. It also means that you probably have a ton of adenosine escaping blockage from that caffeine, which means that they're really, really sleep deprived. So that is not a good sign. You know what would be better than those energy drinks is if during the break, they just completely took a nap, because I don't know if this is in this lecture, but even a 20-minute power nap gives you actually much more power than an energy drink does. And the reason why that's true is because when we fall asleep, our built up adenosine gets repackaged quickly by our mitochondria into ATP, or by our mitochondria into ATP, which is what our brain uses for fuel, our entire body uses for fuel. And so ATP gets broken down to ADP, AMP, and then just free adenosine. That's one of the lowest state. And so the more free adenosine you have, the more your mitochondria really need you to sleep. And but within 20 minutes even, that mitochondria has built up enough ATP to go. Whereas caffeine just fools your brain and makes it run on fumes. So they really want to do the right thing by their bodies, they should take a 20-minute nap instead.
Really quickly, Sky, Lorraine's friend and colleague, wanted to say that he feels attacked.
Tell Sky's friend that he just goes to sleep, then he won't be attacked anymore.
Sorry, Sky, but it wasn't you, but okay.
Yeah, it really can't be. Those energy drinks don't even say how much caffeine they have in them. And I know some anesthesiologists at my job at Michigan that would never drink those things because they're considered nutraceuticals and not FDA regulated, but they've got so much of various things that they never tell you about it. So it's not, yeah, try and stay away from them if you possibly can. My recommendation. I
Another
don't.
question. A hand is up from Florencia.
Yes, Florencia, hi.
Hi, I have a question. So I have spoken with my students about the duration of the, how long they should sleep every night.
Right.
And that has been, some of the discussions are about how long is enough, no?
Yes.
And I'm basing this more into like people who want to take naps,
Yeah.
or people who believe that just a little bit is okay. And you were mentioning, that the
Power nap.
N3 stage
Oh,
is
yes.
very important, obviously also REM. But then, there is this thing about the first and second sleep that has made it into like the New York Times and so on.
Yeah.
They are like, but
Okay,
where
so
we, shouldn't be we sleeping for hours and then waking up. So anyway, within the
yeah.
context of how the sleep cycle goes,
Yeah.
what's your take on whether like somebody would sleep 4 hours at night and then
Yeah.
4 hours in the day or something.
Yeah. All right. Well, so that's a really good question, but there is some really good answers for that. And one of the things is what happens with when you wake up in the morning and expose yourself to bright light. Different people are differentially sensitive to different amounts of light. So some people really need to go outside. Even on a cloudy day, the amount of lumens or lux of light is much brighter than indoor, you know, indoor light. So, but some people really need to get outside. Other people are fine with just the indoor light. But what that does is it tells your body what time it is. And then at night, that process S, that circadian process C, sorry, the circadian process will cause your young, healthy body to release melatonin if you're not exposing yourself to bright light at night, because melatonin is the hormone of darkness. And when it's released, you really should fall asleep. And that's usually around 10:30 at night. You'll have a surge in melatonin. And so you should really align your sleep to that melatonin surge, because that is melatonin causes a cascade of events that allows your cells to really take full advantage of sleep. If you're not sleeping during that time, you're not getting that big surge of growth hormone. You're not getting other hormones that need to be released with sleep, and you're not getting all of the repair work done. So if you say sleep 4 hours at night and then 4 hours in the afternoon, if that 4 hours isn't coincident with either one of those 4 hours, is not coincident with your own melatonin surge, then you're not benefiting from sleep the way you should be. Now, one analogy you might tell your friend is that that it's like sleep is like I think of it as a washing machine with different cycles occurring at different times. And so getting deep slow wave sleep, because you've deprived yourself of it during at night. If you're getting it in a nap during the daytime, fine. It's just you're getting it without melatonin. It's almost like the washing machine without soap in it, right? It's it's doing the thing, it's agitating the clothes, it's putting water through it, but it's not getting it nearly as clean as it should be, and your sleep is not doing what it needs to do. So that's just one example of why that's probably not a great idea. You want to get your sleep in the way that it's designed. Now, I'm totally not against naps. That's perfectly fine, but you still want to align your sleep with that melatonin surge.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Florence. Yeah. All right, so let me just pop, again, please keep interrupting me, because I just want to talk about these different stages of sleep. And then this is REM in red, and that's where we have our dreams. That's where a lot of our creativity happens, where we sort of create a new whole from the sum of the parts that we've learned during the daytime. So a new schema, and make new creative insights. And we're also sort of pruning away all those things we need to prune away. It's almost like I think of it as what is a redecorator? Someone who comes in and redecorates your house? Anyway, it's like having someone to decorate your house. Given you have a party with a bunch of gifts, and someone has to put those gifts where they go and get rid of whatever's now redundant and old and broken. So that's what REM sleep is for. If you don't have it, it's just you're not as nice. And actually, you absolutely need it for life. And we don't know why yet. But if you deprive yourself of only REM sleep for 2, 3, 5 weeks, you will die. So different animals will die at different rates, but we will also die. So you can get all of the slow wave sleep you want, but without REM sleep, you'll die. And you'll die just as fast, if not faster, than total sleep deprivation. So you need that stage as well. Okay. Yeah, Martin.
Can I have a question? And Rosario has a question, but I heard there are certain, right, MOA inhibitors. Don't they prevent REM?
Yes, yes. Monoamine oxidase inhibitor.
What?
Yeah,
People
I
take
know.
that for mental health issues, guys, by the way.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Can you speak on that
Yeah, absolutely. So, so there was one study back in the 90s, I believe, that tested people with monoamine oxidase inhibitors, or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or selective noradrenergic reuptake inhibitors, and all three of those things, which are usually for depression, they deprive people of REM sleep. Now, that study, unfortunately, never studied people under various conditions, like if they were trying to learn something or whatever. There was just kind of people in a lab for a month showed almost complete REM suppression. Now, the REM suppression went from 0 to, I think there was some people got up to like 25% of the normal amount of REM sleep during those night to night. So it wasn't a total REM suppression every night. But it needs to be revisited based on, on the techniques that we know today. There's also an interesting thing, which is that sleep as measured from the cortical surface cup electrodes isn't necessarily what sleep throughout the brain is. So for example, if one area of your brain is in cortex is in non-REM sleep, the subcortical areas like the hippocampus can be in REM sleep. So those studies are totally based on very surface measures of sleep. So it's so some part of the brain, given the fact that in all animals, if you don't get REM sleep forever, you'll kind of die. There must be parts of the brain that are getting REM sleep for thermoregulation, for all of the various functions that REM sleep has. But we do need to repeat those experiments because it would be really interesting. And the few people that I know that are taking these drugs and we recorded their sleep, even just from cup electrodes, there was a huge variety of amounts of REM sleep from night to night. And in some records, I saw, a solid hour of REM sleep, which, this normally REM sleep lasts about 15, 20 minutes, something like that. So a solid hour is like this big, long block of REM. So that's a great question. And I think it needs to be revisited. Really appreciate that. Yeah. And
Yes, I
Rosario,
wanted to point out Rosario's
yeah.
question. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah. How does one sleep for 8 hours and a couple hours later still be tired? Well, it's probably because, well, there could be two things actually that are happening. One is that you might not be getting as restorative of sleep as you think. So if people who have sleep apnea, for example, wake up many, many times at night and they're not even aware of it. So their sleep is not nearly as restorative as they think. So if you do find yourself actually asleep for 8 hours a night and you still need a lot more of it, you might want to see a doctor. Is there something wrong? Or maybe, there's a various different people need different amounts of sleep. So some people just normally sleep 9 hours a night and they're perfectly fine. That's just what they need. Other people, 7.5 hours is fine and they're perfectly fine and that's what they need. On average, though, the population seems to need 8 hours and 15 minutes of sleep to 8.5 hours or 8 hours and 40 minutes of actual time asleep in order to have zero buildup of attention lapses and various things. So even with 7 hours a night asleep, you get a slow buildup of attention lapses. I don't have that slide in this deck, but it's, yeah. So yeah, so maybe you think you're getting 8 hours of sleep, but it's not actually 8 hours of sleep. So you just need more. Yeah.
I
And
have a,
yeah.
oh, sorry. I just have another question.
Yeah.
So many students go to sleep or understand like the signal to go to sleep basically when they cannot they cannot keep their eyes open, right?
Yeah.
That's what they recognize as being sleepy.
Right.
So what is a better signal
Yeah.
that you are sleepy and you need to go
That's
to sleep?
a very great question. And I think I'm just starting to come to this realization myself. I don't know if you've ever seen babies and their ears get bright red and then they start kind of pawing at them. That is a sign that they need a nap. And that's because their ears and their periphery is vasodilated, and vasodilation comes with melatonin. And also a reduction in your sympathetic, which is a very arousal driving drive, and a rise instead of your parasympathetic system. So I don't know, in adults, I've never felt my ears, and my dark skin would not allow myself to, see them getting red, but I've never felt them sort of burning and itching like babies' ears do. but that's a good sign also. But if your palms of your hands are hot and you're not exercising, and it's around 10 o'clock at night and you've kind of gotten flushed, then that's probably a sign that your melatonin is being released and you need to go to bed. So have them pay attention to their peripheral temperature and see if that helps them also. If your eyes are shut and you can't keep your eyes open, that's a huge homeostatic drive. Of course, that's what causes people to have car accidents, because they don't know until they're asleep at the wheel that they were even sleepy. So yeah, that's that's like the end stage sleepiness. Might be what you want to call it. All right.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
vasodilation. Yes, that's good. Thank you, Marlon. I appreciate that. Yeah. Okay, shall I go on? Go on to the next one. So this is about how much sleep we need across the lifespan. This is not linear, by the way. So you can see in the first few weeks of life and prenatally even more, there's a huge amount of rapid eye movement dream state you get. And that's because what's going on during that stage is like remodeling of your brain with new information. And there's a lot of new information coming in, a lot of synapses being born, the connections between neurons that need to be shaped based on your experience. You're learning to walk and talk and all kinds of things in those first few months of life. Yeah, this is how much people get, and it's not necessarily how much people need, Rosario. So yeah, this is about how much people should get or do get in each. And this was first done in 1966. So I'd be interested in seeing this redone today, based on what people are doing around the world. But if you give adults, like in this age range right here, 14 hours a day with nothing to do in a darkened room but a bed to sleep, they will still only sleep about 8.5 hours a day after the first couple of days when they're making up for lost sleep. So this is actually not so bad. Not so bad. Yeah. So yeah, less and less. And this is the deep slow wave sleep. When you're about 5 or 10 years old, oh, that deep slow wave sleep is beautiful. And it's so deep that it's really difficult to arouse children from that state. In fact, fire alarms don't even work. So they need to change fire alarms, so that parents just have to not rely on fire alarms if they've got a child in this age range. You have to just go get your kids yourself and scoop them up because they could sleep right through it. Yeah, sleep drive is very, very, very high. Okay, so this is a study that we did a few years ago, 5 years ago already. Sheesh. That's the amount of REM sleep you need as a function of total sleep. So the amount of REM to total sleep as you get older and older. This is age in years, and this is the increase in our brain mass. So as our brains grow when we're infants, with all of the new experiences and new synapses that are being born between neurons, as that process goes, we need less and less REM sleep until it changes at about 3 years of age, 2.5 years of age, where it becomes slow wave sleep that dominates instead of REM sleep. So dominates the drive for sleep. But yeah, during this time, we've got all kinds of things going, like we're learning to walk. This is one of my nephews learning to walk at about age, 1 year. Yeah, 1.5 years old. Talking, all of that stuff happens really, really early. So sleep is super important for those early stages. So this is just a glimpse of what the neurotransmitters look like in your brain at the various stages of sleep. So here's wakefulness, where you have high levels of acetylcholine, which helps us concentrate on what people are saying and doing, what we're doing, norepinephrine, which helps us learn really quickly, serotonin, which helps us with our mood and reward seeking and all kinds of different kinds of behaviors. During slow wave sleep, acetylcholine goes away. We are not attending to the world around us. This is why with children with such high levels of huge slow waves, their acetylcholine is gone and they have a hard time attending to, for example, a fire alarm. And then norepinephrine and serotonin are sort of intermediate. And then during the REM stage 2, which is that sleep spindle stage I talked about, all of these neurotransmitters are gone. And that's when you're really consolidating memories from short-term to long-term memory structures. And then during REM sleep, it's almost the inverse of slow wave sleep. You have tons of acetylcholine, probably the instigator of all those dreams, those wild dreams. There's also something called PGO waves, which are probably also instigating dreams, which is a lot of glutamate, which is the excitatory neurotransmitter, and then no norepinephrine or serotonin. So this state is what selective noradrenergic uptake inhibitors and selective serotonergic reuptake inhibitors, why they block REM sleep is they don't allow norepinephrine and serotonin to go to zero like it needs to in REM sleep for REM sleep to be normal. So yeah, okay, yeah. So yeah, so I was looking at Rosario. Your grandma doesn't get enough sleep and she's awake really early. Yeah. Um, yeah, there's not enough studies right now about women and menopause and hormones and sleep. There really needs to be a lot more. It's a complicated story. It seems to be dependent on what kinds of receptors you have for dopamine, of all things, to how sensitive you are to estrogen levels dropping. It's definitely a complex but beautiful picture that we need to unravel with some research. So thanks for that. All right, so so these are just the various states of sleep and how we go from waking to non-REM sleep to REM sleep, back to non-REM sleep, back and forth about 5 times a night until the jobs of sleep are done, and then you wake up spontaneously. You cannot go to sleep until the homeostatic need is built up again, and the circadian and homeostatic goes together. So even if you've got 4 more hours in this darkened room with a bed, you'll just sit there twiddling your thumbs or humming to yourself or whatever, because you cannot oversleep. So that's one I wanted to sort of tell you from this. So this is kind of the functions of the various states of sleep. This is the cleaning of the brain through the lymphatic system, which is sweeping the junk out of your brain. This is the conversion of adenosine to ATP that happens right there in the first 20 minutes of sleep. Proteins are synthesized, which you need for learning. You need it for rebuilding and protecting your muscles. During that transition to REM with those sleep spindles, you're integrating and consolidating, transferring information from one area to the next for the long term. And then during REM sleep, you're doing a different kind of cleaning, more refined cleaning, where you can weaken the connections that no longer need to be there. It's really important because otherwise you'll just saturate your brain with things that you don't need to know, and you can reimagine and create new connections during those stages. So if you don't get enough sleep, this is what it looks like. All those stages kind of crowd together, and you get all kinds of different kinds of sleep disorders like night terrors, where you're vocalizing your emotions because your emotional system is strongly on during REM sleep. But if you don't have atonia, because you're also in slow wave sleep, you'll be vocalizing those emotions. Parents will be terrorized by your night terrors, but the child doesn't remember them. So just take it as a sign that they're not getting enough sleep. Sleep paralysis. I don't know how many people here have had sleep paralysis where you wake up and you can't move. That's scary. That's also a sign that probably you're not sleeping enough. And but if you just go back to sleep and wait till you wake up again, it'll all, emerge like it's supposed to most of the time. But people with narcolepsy and cataplexy will experience this a lot more. Confusional arousals. I don't know if you've ever had a confusional arousal, phone call in the middle of the night, you're awake, you're answering the phone, but your brain is still pretty much asleep. And so you're kind of confused about where you are and what you're saying. You don't even know necessarily what you're saying. And then there's sleep talking, which is much more of that. And then REM behavior disorder, which is kind of the most dangerous of all the sleep states, because you're really acting out your dreams, but you're not seeing anything. There's no wakefulness as part of that. And so you're not really seeing anything that's involved in the world around you. Instead, you're acting out your dreams blindly. And so you can completely hurt yourself or other people when you're doing that. All right. So these are just kind of
Gina,
separations. Yes, go ahead. Yes, please.
can I ask a quick question about the sleep you get when you've had like an active day versus a sedentary day?
Mhm.
So the tiredness you feel from exercise, like
Yeah.
rigorous cardiovascular exercise,
Yeah.
versus the tiredness you get from like me, binge watching Hercule Poirot episodes on Amazon Prime.
Right, right, right.
Do they lead to different balances in these sleep states, or they're
Yeah,
ways for us
no.
to
So
get?
what exercise will do, what I'm assuming Marlon is doing right now, good for you. Yay. Yes, that's great. Is it builds up your motor cortex is working, building up that adenosine need, actually, and that allows your motor cortex especially to have big, beautiful, deep, slow waves of slow wave sleep. That it makes your sleep more efficient in that sense, and more restorative because the signals are all there. So if you're just exercising one part of your brain, your math part of your brain or whatever, that part is going to be the one that gets the most slow wave sleep at night. If you're exercising your, just your, if you're a rat and only your right whiskers are being stimulated, it'll be your left cortex, which controls your right whiskers, that gets the big, beautiful slow waves and nowhere else. So yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, great question. All right, so this is just kind of a from that one sports paper that I showed you earlier. This is kind of the various times a day where it's optimal to do various things. And this time, 5 to 8 p.m., it seems to be ideal actually for sports for some reason. Nobody really knows why, but if your sports team is playing in this 7 o'clock, time, and the other team, it's a different time zone for them. Say they're flying from Australia and it's middle of the night. Your team is probably going to win just because they're playing in a time that's right for their whole circadian and function system. So yeah, so this is what happens overnight: protein synthesis, growth hormone release, many of these other things that I talked about, memory, consolidation, etc. So if you want any of these figures, they are in that paper, but I can also send them to you if you want them. So it's sort of a quick reference guide for yourself and for your students. Okay, so this is just, I only have a few more minutes, unfortunately, but this has been so much fun. I love all these questions. So this is just an example of our glymphatic system here's the brain of a rat. This is its olfactory bulb, which is about the same as our size of our olfactory bulb, but it's a much bigger percentage of their brain than ours is of our brain. And you can see that these are the areas that receive all of the junk from your brain as your brain is cleaning itself through the slow waves of slow wave sleep. So here's how you restore energy. I told you a 20-minute nap is good. So here's the longer you're awake, the more adenosine that builds up in your brain. And then the minute you go to sleep, within 20 minutes, those adenosine levels are down again. And so like recharging your batteries. And then this is when you wake up, they start building up and up again. So that's because your mitochondria wake up when you go to sleep. They really get going and building that at ATP. Richard, do you have a question? No? Okay. Just
One question from the second year PhD
oh,
student,
yes, excellent. Yes.
Lisa Moore. So many questions about reproductive hormone cycles and sleep, thinking about things like PMDD and insomnia, parsing out what is hormonal and what is symptoms of psychopathology and how that interacts with sleep. Can it ever
Yes,
be done?
premenopausal or PMS? Oh, it's like PMS probably.
PMDD.
Yeah. Is that what that is? It's like a
It's a
PM.
disorder. It's considered like its own DSM class, but
Yeah.
um,
Oh,
yeah.
dysphoria, premenstrual dysphoria.
Lisa,
Yes.
why don't you explain it?
Psychotic disorder.
Yeah.
Right, premenstrual dysphoric disorder.
Yes, that sounds right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so again, there aren't very many studies about women and their cycles, but the few that I've seen, at least one that I've done in rats and their cycle, female rats, there is a vast difference in the amount of sleep from stage to stage. And so for women, the complaints of insomnia go up a lot when your hormone levels are all high, and then when they come crashing down just before menstruation, there's a lot of things that change about your sleep and your mood and all of that. So yeah, it would be interesting to try and control for sleep and see how much of that PMDD is due to the changes in sleep that also naturally happen. That would be a great study. Nobody's done it. Be really cool. Okay, so, oh yeah, this is the amount of growth hormone released when you go to sleep in both men and women. And if you forego that sleep, you also forego that big surge in growth hormone. You might get as much kind of low levels throughout the day, but as is true for other hormones, a surge does a very different thing than a little bit leaked out over time. Yeah, okay. So, so we talked about these different functions of sleep, so we won't go through that again. But we also know sleep is really for remembering and for forgetting the things that we need to forget, so we don't have screenshots, of the entire day, of every day of our lives. There are people who have perfect memories like that, and it's not the happiest of stages. So, yeah, so Richard, you're asking about melatonin to reset the circadian rhythm that's been disrupted. Absolutely, that's fine. It might help you to adjust to new time zone faster. Young people have plenty of melatonin normally and naturally, so as long as you can expose yourself to light during the daytime, and to reset it, it's probably going to be all right within a few days. I don't have anything against taking melatonin, except that it's not FDA regulated. And so one melatonin pill might have 0 melatonin in it. Another one might have 100 times what it says it has in it. So I would, suggest some prescribed melatonin agonist rather than, because that's FDA regulated, rather than the nutritional supplements, which, you just don't know what you're going to get. It's like a box of chocolates. But there's no harm in it. As long as you're not taking it all the time. Young people taking high levels of melatonin for a long period of time, it might be suppressive of their reproductive system, because melatonin has a lot to do with reproduction too. Yeah. All right. So I guess we're closing out. And I really appreciate you. We'll have to come back and do some more later. I'm happy to, maybe next school year. I'll just show you one more slide, which is that this is how much of the night we normally spend with our cortex and subcortical areas in different states. So about a third of the night on a normal night, you'll be spending with your hippocampus and your cortex in 2 different states.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it's really.
Sorry, I got unmuted. I didn't know.
No. I appreciate that, Marlon. I think it's cool too. This is something that my student Raquel Guthrie discovered in humans. And thanks to my lab for all the hard work they've been doing. And thank you guys so much for your attention today. So
Thank you so much. And everybody, can we do some sort of Zoom related claps? Dr. Gina Poe, well worth the wait, that's for sure. And we would love to have you back.
Okay, sure.
I'm hearing clamoring for part 2 over here. So
It'll be fun. It'll be a lot of fun.